with this case with Alex Purdy. I know that there's been some new video that's come out even since I first started drafting this morning, but life happens, right? And so for that, people are arguing whether it's AI generated, it's legit. And the bottom line is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The question is whether or not it was premeditated in. We can't be killing citizens on the street because they've kicked out a taillight. Like, that's just not what we do. But what I really want to talk about is something that's come up a lot in different groups that I'm in, and that's about this concept of privilege. And I really wanted to talk about why this case in particular is getting so much attention. And I really kind of did this analysis and brought it down to sort of 4 key points. So I really want to highlight what happened. I think most people are aware of this case that he was tackled down to the ground. They said they saw a gun. There's evidence that there was a gun, and then they shot him like a lot of times, right? But as we're looking at that, the question comes up into why did this become the perfect storm? Like, why this moment? There have been so many people who were shot by ICE or CPB or these other agents, Keith Porter, who was a Black father, 43 years old. They didn't even do any analysis into this. If you look at what happened with Silverio Gonzalez, and I apologize if I am not pronouncing his name correctly. He's a Latino father, and he was a cook, and he was shot by ICE agents when he was dropping off his kids to school. And these are emotional to me, these Chicago ones, because this is very, very close to where I live. And we were here in this area in October, when Midway Blitz was happening. And now we're just seeing this in another part of the country. And so, this is very raw. This is very real, right? You have Geraldo Lunas Campos. He's a Cuban immigrant, and he died in ICE custody when he was in Texas. It's been ruled by a medical examiner that this was a homicide, and he was choked to death, right? And then you have January 9th, Perde La, a Cambodian refugee who was in the U.S. since he was 2 years old, and they believe that was due to medical neglect, and that he was experiencing drug withdrawals. And some people are like, oh, these are bad people, this is whatever. Like, that doesn't mean they get executed. That doesn't mean you let them die. Like, that is not humanitarily correct. That is not what we should be doing as a society. And it's really hard to just watch that this is going on here in America. So in total, 38 people have died connected to ICE and the ICE operation since January 2025 last year, and 8 shootings. And so this is really much more than previous ones. If you've seen some of my other work, I've talked about the comparison, so I'm not going to go into that right now. But what I do want to do is kind of go into these 4 concentric circles and talk about this diagram that I have here. And if you go into the full articles that I make, you can see there's a list of the different people who've experienced this. And I don't want to minimize that. This is absolutely horrific, what you see going on. Like, this is not acceptable. And we should not accept this with any human. But why did this case get highlighted? And the first case is what you're seeing is white privilege, right? And I know people hate that term, but he is a white man. He is professional. I heard a influencer who first day was talking about it, and he's like, this guy could be me. This is a white guy out there in like Patagonia or Colombia or whatever kind of brand clothes, right? Like, people can identify with him. This is a man who is, working for the VA, working for the system, right? And then getting labeled a domestic terrorist. And this really struck a lot of people. Like, this happened right away with no analysis. And then the second thing that happened, and this is like sort of like a weird part coming in, Second Amendment rights, right? Like, the president of the United States said, well, you can't have guns. The NRA was like, no, like, carrying a firearm is not a death sentence. It has created this entire backlash from the Second Amendment community saying, hey, you know what? This is not cool. Like, we're big fans of the Second Amendment. We've taken our weapons to these different protests and things. So how's that going to work out, right? Clear video evidence. And there were so many videos in this case. And this goes into video everything, live stream everything if you can, get everything out there as much as you can, because having these different camera angles, this helps so much. If you'll notice what happened with Renee Nicole Good, if you'll notice what's happened now, what I will tell you is when Mira Martinez was hit, I think there was like one, maybe two videos of that incident, right? So the people who are out there videoing, you're making a difference. You're putting your lives at risk, but you are making a difference. So keep that up. And then using his ability, his privilege to help others. And I think that this is something that we need to talk about as a community. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, this is just because a white guy was killed that people care. I think that there needs to be something deeper, which is the emotional empathy, our abilities as humans who care about other humans. Alex Purdy, he didn't have to be out there, right? Like he could have been at home, like watching sports or on a hike, and he could have been doing a lot of other things, but he was out there because he believed in it, right? And if the other video is true or not, there was a time. It has been said that he did have his ribs broken by ice. It was said that he was out there, so he knew this. He was observing out there. He was advocating for his community. He believed in what he was doing, right? And I think that this is so important. When you go back to the Civil War that was fought here in this country, a lot of it was over slavery and the right for people to exist. And you had an entire section of the United States, the North, that said, like, yes, people have a right to their lives, not women. That's a whole nother story that you guys can hear me rage about a different day. But, at least men at the time of any color should have a right to be free human beings, right? And so they fought this war, and eventually it was decided they could be free. Yes, there was horrible, horrible things that happened over that, okay? And, we could debate all the time over those things, right? But there were literally white people, white men at the time, because women also couldn't serve, and a few did underground, which I've talked about other times too. But the bottom line is that these people were willing to sacrifice themselves. They were willing to say, the rights of other people are worth it. So one of the things that's coming out a lot that you're hearing from the MAGA block is the terrible thing of toxic empathy. Oh, they care too much. These women should care more about their own families. No, you cannot care about humanity so much. You cannot. The humans are there. Humans exist. We have a need to be connected to every other human. If you are only caring about those who are blood related to you, you are epically failing as a human being. And if you look at what Alex did, he went out and he served his community. So I really want to make sure that we're thinking about what are these four intersections? Why is it the perfect storm? Why is it that they are finally taking notice to this? I do want to once again highlight this case with Mira Martinez. She was a Latina woman, and thankfully she survived here. She was shot 5 times, and the agent bragged 5 shots, 7 holes. She had 7 holes in her body, and it said, "Oh, put that in the book, boys." They took that vehicle and they hid it. They took the vehicle out of state from Chicago. I don't know exactly where they took it, but they hid the vehicle, and then eventually all the charges were dropped. She's still labeled a domestic terrorist according to DHS. There was no investigation whatsoever into Keith Porter's family. We're all watching the situation as it comes about with Renee Nicole Good, and we really just need to realize all of these situations should be investigated. I've heard a lot of reports that little Liam, the 5-year-old in the bunny hat, is extraordinarily sick right now in this Texas detention facility. These detention facilities are really terrible. And I don't know if people remember this from history, but Anne Frank didn't die because she went to a gas chamber. She died because of the conditions in the camp where she was being held. And I think for history to repeat itself is a terrible thing. And you know what? A lot of times, we keep going back to Germany and what happened there. But you know what? The same thing happened here. Evil, terrible people took blankets with smallpox and gave them to the Native American community. Native Americans are rolled up and getting held by ICE. This is not acceptable. When we look at the Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act gave power to women and minorities. When you look at how that came about, they actually thought that by adding sex to it, that they were not going to get the support for the Civil Rights Act. That's why it was adding gender. But women came out, women supported. And if you look at what's happening now, Alex Purdy went out. He understood the importance of this. He supported. And we need solidarity now more than ever. So if you're out there and you're saying, hey, why is this the time it cares? It happened to be the perfect storm. And I will tell you, if he was in a car, I don't think this would be the same discussion. I think that Second Amendment rights group, they are really the clincher. So what is it called to action? Be connected, go to your neighbors, have plans. There's a lot of community organizing plans about how people are working together right now. There's a lot going on right now with what can you do. I've written a lot about, how to use 5 calls, how to use Signs for Justice. Get a hold of your senators, get a hold of the House of Representatives. And the exciting thing is the Senate, right before I started talking, hopefully it's still the same, had said, we are not voting for funding DHS. They took that out into a separate continuing resolution so that they can have time to work that issue. Meanwhile, they're passing the other 5 appropriations bills, which is really exciting. So thank you so much for being here. Please like, please subscribe. Please go to my site and buy some Childless Cat Lady and Organized Wine Moms merch. And I appreciate all of you. And thank you for doing what you're doing out there.